Hey guys, welcome to my little tributes speaking video here. Today it's Wednesday, July 16th, 2014. It's been 15 years today since JFK Jr. along with his wife, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, and her sister Lauren Bessette crashed in the waters off Martha's Vineyard in a plane that was piloted by JFK Jr. Everybody knows the details about what happened, I guess. And all those Star Magazine, National Enquirer, Globe, over the years they've tried to pinpoint the crash on Carolyn's drug use or cell phones. Her cell phone led to the crash of the plane, or that they took off late in the sky because Carolyn was getting her nails done or was shopping for a dress and was late getting there. He wanted to go into the air earlier, but because she was late, he went into the air when it was dark. JFK Jr. wasn't instrument trained. He can only fly on visual flight rules, which basically states he knows his control panel, right? But when it comes to nighttime, there's an autopilot button, there's all your gauges, your meters and stuff. He knew like the basics of it, but he couldn't. If he was trapped in a certain situation, he couldn't read his instruments to get himself out of that situation. He had visual flight rules only. And if he would have been in Canada and in so many other countries that night with the haze that was in the air that night, he would have been allowed to take off using only visual flight rules. I've read so many books on JFK Jr., JFK. I probably got 2,000 magazines, newspapers, articles from JFK's assassination. Stuff from when he was alive, presidential stuff, like campaign stuff, Robert Kennedy even, JFK Jr. autographs. Like, I'm a huge collector. Like, I probably have one of the biggest JFK Jr., JFK Kennedy collections in the world. It's insane. I've invested thousands and thousands of dollars into it over the last 15 years, 16, 17 years. So anyhow, John that night, before he decided to get into the plane, he checked to see what the weather was going to be like on Martha's Vineyard, because they were going to be dropping her sister off on the vineyard first and then flying on to Hyannisport for his cousin Rory Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's youngest daughter. Her wedding was the next day, so they were going to stop at Martha's Vineyard first. JFK Jr., when he checked, he was told that he had 6 to 8 miles visibility in the air. But after reading books with different pilots and stuff, they said that the automated weather system that they had there implemented at the time would lead you into a false sense of security. It only went straight up in the sky. It didn't scan the outside like like a scanner would do. Scan. Okay, we see fog. We see rain. Cloudy. It only would take it would go straight up. And if right straight up was sunny, it would report, 10 miles visibility. But if it was right outside that one line, haze, smog, fog, and you could barely see, then it didn't record that. It recorded the one small slice of the sky that it would detect. So JFK Jr. in a way was lured into thinking he had 6 to 8 miles visibility on his way to Martha's Vineyard that night. So when he got to the airport, people say John shouldn't have flown. He only had about 300 hours of flying hours. 20 of them might have been at night, and they usually were with an instructor. He said he preferred to fly at night because he loved the way the lights were of New York and stuff. He had crashed his ultralight plane, which is basically a go-kart with a parachute. He crashed it, I believe, into a tree somewhere on the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, and he broke his ankle. And he was getting around on crutches. He had just gotten the cast removed on July 15th, and the doctor said you can fly again, but take it easy on your ankle. So that night, he attended a Yankees game, and his face got flashed onto the scoreboard, and people were in awe, freaking right out. JFK Jr.'s here, but he was in the owner of the Yankees. He was a special private block. Anyhow, so the next day was his last day alive. He, as we know, he had his magazine George. That was John said that he met with the new CEO of the company, and they said the new CEO later said that they felt positive with the future of his magazine because everybody thought it was going to unfold. And John told his staff that day, "As long as I'm alive, this magazine will continue to publish." And then at another point, he said, "We'll all have our jobs at Christmas time." So he was under a lot of stress with George. So the last 2 nights, basically, of his life, he was staying at the Stanhope Hotel in New York City. A lot of people say he went there to focus on his magazine, where he couldn't be distracted, but other people say that he had a fight with his wife, so he just thought it would be, I just want to get away for a little while, just to let things simmer a little bit. And that's what a lot of his colleagues have said in books they've read. People say, oh, he went there to focus on his magazine, but the truth was he had a fight with his wife. So his last 2 nights alive, he didn't spend them at his home. Anyhow, so John got his pilot's license in 1998, and he had 300 hours or so of flying hours, which is more than enough that the FAA requires for somebody to fly under visual flight rules. He was going to be certified for instrument training, not in, he was going to do it that summer. He was going to learn how to, there's an autopilot on your plane. You press that button, it'll take you to your destination. It'll bring you in for a perfect landing. But JFK Jr., he didn't really know much about his instrument ratings. Obviously, he didn't, because if he did, he wouldn't have crashed his plane. So yeah, they left. He picked up on that Friday, July 16th, 1999. He left his offices at George Magazine, and he picked up his wife's sister, Lauren. She was really high up in the banking firm, I believe. And they drove to the Essex County airport in Caldwell, New Jersey, I believe it was. But was this one thing that they say that he forgot to anticipate? This was a Friday, a hot Friday, in New York City in the summertime in July. So he underestimated the traffic. So by the time he got to New Jersey, he left around 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30 maybe. It took about 2 hours for him to reach the airport. And his goal for that day was to be in the sky on his plane before it became dark, because he didn't want to fly in the dark, although he said he liked flying in the dark. So they arrived. He dropped Lauren off. He went to the convenience store right across the street, and he knew the guy. He talked to him, and he signed an autograph for somebody. He purchased some batteries and a banana or something. And whenever the store owner asked him, if he was flying that night, he said yes. And right before John left, he said, "Have a good flight." And he said that John looked right at him and said, "I'll be fine. I'll be fine." So then he went over to his airplane. And Carolyn arrived by streetcar or whatever, those type of cars. So he did the usual pre-flight check, the routine. But one thing that they noticed is that he was gunning his engines really, really loud right there on the tarmac, which is unusual in other pilot. I know that you don't do that right there, I guess. So it's almost like, I don't know if he was showing off or he just wanted to give it the gas or whatever, like they say. But anyhow, they took to the skies about 8:15, just as the sun was setting. Now, if you're going from New Jersey to New York, I don't know much about the states. So you have like New Jersey, New York, Long Island, and then you have the coast, the Connecticut coast, and the other. I don't know my geography. And then, so he flew the route throughout as it's getting dark. He flew hugging the coastline, basically seeing the lights below. But then there's one point where rather than still sticking to the coast, and maybe it would have took him 20 more minutes to go around, he would have safely landed on Martha's Vineyard. But rather than do that, John took a shortcut. He went, instead of going like this, he went like this, which led to, I believe, it was either 20 miles or 40 miles over open water. I forget exactly what it was. But the haze that night, another guy with 3,000 hours said he had trouble flying that exact same route. And he's never been in a condition like that, and he had 3,000 hours of flying. So he said John was doomed from the beginning. He said a haze probably enveloped him. He had no way to know if he was up or down. His spatial he would have been disoriented, what I think they call spatial disorientation. So basically, John was in a room, closet door with the door shut. Couldn't see nothing. Couldn't rely on his instruments because he couldn't read them. Visual flight rules only. So basically, John made a series of going up a little bit and then coming down on a fast descent. And then he maintained level very 10,000 feet, I believe it was, over the water. He made a series of ups and downs, turns, and then suddenly the plane went into what they call a graveyard spiral, or a death spiral. Basically, the plane going all the way down to the water. He lost control of the plane. They say that he fought the plane all the way to the end because of the way the impact was and the way it happened. So basically, he lost control of the plane because he was in. It's as if his windows were all painted white. The haze was that bad, and he tried to get out of it. But your body is telling you one thing, and your senses are telling you another thing. When you get into that spatial disorientation, that pilots are learned about, they're taught that can happen. You don't know if your body's going up or down. So that's, and sadly, what happened. And 3 lives were crushed, so suddenly. It took them 5 days, I believe, to locate their bodies and bring them to the surface. They still held out hope. Friday, July 16th, over the weekend, Sunday, Monday, it was clear that it was going to be a search and not a recovery. It's search and rescue. It was a search and recovery. Sorry. They gave up hope. I believe their bodies were discovered on July 21st. John was still in his pilot seat, and his sister-in-law and his wife were in the back. The debris was spread out over quite a distance, and his plane, when it was brought to the surface, was an entire mess. So they dubbed it that it was on pilot error, that John, flew in not the best conditions. But I fully believe, just like I said, he was lured into a false sense that he would have had all that visibility. Even flying at night, he thought that he was going to have a clear sky, and he had a hazy night, and he wasn't instrument trained, so he couldn't use his instruments. And then, just like that, John F. Kennedy Jr. was dead. He was the plane was going towards the surface of the water, I believe at 3,500 feet per second, or minute, I'm not quite sure. I think it was per second though. So, that was fast. So the ending probably didn't take very long. But God knows what it must have been like for those last 20-30 seconds until it was all done. So, I remember that. I mourned with the world. So it's hard to believe it's been 15 years, but rest in peace, John. Rest in peace, Carolyn, and rest in peace, Lauren. A lot of people are thinking about you guys today. July 16th, 2014. July 16th, 1999. 15 years old. Rest in peace, Joe. Lauren, Carolyn.